Our webinar tonight is titled Learning Style of Fijian Students in New Zealand. This presentation tonight is the work of a PhD student, Alvin Chand. It's going to be an interesting presentation to learn about how Fijian students learn in New Zealand as opposed to Western students. Alvin is currently completing his PhD from Waikato University in New Zealand. Originally from Bar, Alvin has been teaching science for the past 17 years. Although his study is based in New Zealand and he has used the science curriculum as his context, I am sure much of what he has to say today, his findings, his research findings, will have a much wider implications in Fiji, in other countries, as well as in other subjects and different year levels. So I would like to invite Alvin to talk to us, to address us, and Alvin, the floor is yours. You can now, you're a co-host, you can share your screen now, Alvin. Alvin.
Okay, thank you, host. Thank you for giving me the platform to come and talk to you guys today. Once again, Nisam Bulabinaka, Ram Ram, Namaste, Assalamu Alaikum to all my brothers and sisters in Fiji and overseas who are listening to this webinar. As being described, my topic, my study is on Fijian students' perceptions of science learning and what they think of science learning in New Zealand classrooms. So just a little bit about myself. I'm the fourth generation Fijian Indian, born and raised in Fiji. My ancestors were brought to Fiji on the indentured labor system to work on sugarcane fields in late 1800s by the British government, as most of you know. My desire for more Pacific students to succeed in science learning is a priority. When I say Pacific students, Fijian students, are part of that. So that's my desire here in New Zealand secondary schools. So that's my family, my parents. We reside in Auckland. We keep our traditions and values by doing lowo and other things that we used to do in Fiji. So the topic for tonight is what are Fijian students' perceptions in science learning in New Zealand classrooms or New Zealand secondary schools. So I'm going to drill a little bit further down into my data. I'm 10 months away from completing my PhD. I've always done my first draft of the thesis. I'm going to see if there is a difference between males and females, Fijian Indians and Haitaukai students here in New Zealand, or Fijian or New Zealand born students, or at different year levels. So if there are significant differences, then I'm going to highlight it. So you might be asking the questions, why measure the perceptions of Fijian students in science learning here in New Zealand? And what's the definition of Fijian students? I think I have said a little bit at the beginning. And what's the theoretical framework? For some of you, probably, if you don't know, theoretical framework is like a theory behind how Fijian students learn. So what has informed my study? That's what we mean by theoretical framework. Participants and where the research was carried out. I'm going to talk about that in concluding remarks. So the reason for me to do this research, it's a bit personal. Currently in New Zealand secondary schools, there is no research done in this particular area on Fijian students. So when my family migrated in 2000, my sister went to high school here. And I was teaching in Fiji that time. But when I migrated here for the last 17 years, I've been teaching in schools in various regions in New Zealand, from Taupo to Waikato region, now in Auckland. I found that there is no professional development for the teachers as to how to teach Fijian students in New Zealand classroom, because there is no literature, there is no research being done. So I thought probably let me have a look and see what Fijian students want from New Zealand classrooms, and in particular science. And it's estimated about 90,000 Fijians live in Aotearoa. When I say Fijian students, it's anyone who associates himself or herself from Fiji, being a Taukai, Fijian Indians, Ratumans, or others, whether they are New Zealand born or recent migrants. So the theoretical framework that has guided this research is what we call is constructivism. Many of you understand that knowledge is being constructed through our experiences of things that we do in our classroom, and then we reflect on those experiences. And also socio-cultural theory, that learning is a social process, and much of our learning occurs through interactions with other people. So that's the theory that very closely matches with how we conceive learning in Fijian secondary schools. So constructivism is a learning theory, as I said, that posits that learners actively construct knowledge and make meaning based on their experiences, either individually or socially. So you can see some of these pictures in here. So this is a recent book that has been written on early childhood learning in Fiji, commissioned by Ministry of Education, which talks about constructivism and which talks about social cultural theory and how knowledge is constructed in a Fijian context. So that guided my research. Now, in order to do a research, you need to have a method. You need to, have a framework that you are going to use. So what I used was a survey, and I'm going to talk about what kind of survey was it, in a Talanoa. Most of the research I'm reading that's coming out either from Fiji, now starting to use Talanoa methodology, which has been proposed by many researchers in the past, like Naimbombo and other Pacific researchers, or Violeti, which says Talanoa is a good research method, which is reciprocal. That means knowledge is not only extracted from the participants, but shared with them. You sit with them, you share the experience. You have to tell them, who you are and why you're doing this research, because many of the research that has been done in Fiji has been done in a Western style of research methodology. So I have sort of tried to trim and use this methodology of Talanoa so that I can extract authentic data. So when I said I did a survey, so this particular survey was called Constructivist Learning Environment Survey. Learning environment is a learning environment in your classroom. And it actually originated in Western Australia, constructivist learning environment, but the scales were different to what you will see on your screen. Scales means the themes. I did a pilot study, and then I actually reworked the themes in the questionnaires. So the first thing that is very important for your students, or for our students, based on my pilot study and my research, is identity and relationship. If you have a relationship with your students, they tend to engage in learning more compared to if you don't. Personal relevance means, or learning in familiar context. If students know in what context you are teaching them, they tend to engage more. They want to participate in some sort of group work or collective learning. That's what I'm going to talk a little bit more in my findings. And critical voice, extent to which students feel that their voice is heard, or extent to which the students can voice out their concerns. And shared control, which means how much they want to share the control of the classroom learning environment with the teacher. So these are the 5 themes. Each theme has got a 5 question. And each question has got a rating, which I'm going to talk about now. So constructivist learning environment, as you can see, I'm just showing you first theme, identity and relationship, which has got 5 questions. The first question is, does my science teacher acknowledge me or my cultural background during science lesson? Acknowledging could be just greeting or, hi, how are you? So almost always or often or sometimes, seldom or almost never. I'm also guilty at times due to time pressure. We enter our classroom and we just go straight with the lesson rather than just having a feel at where our students are, what the mood of the classroom are, so we just go straight to the business. Or does my science teacher pronounces my name correctly? Many of the times we, because Fiji or New Zealand is a multicultural classroom, we tend to, it's difficult for us to pronounce some of the names. Okay, are we able to do it? Or do we have opportunity to share our cultural experiences with people within the classroom? Or do I have a good relationship with my teacher? Or my science teacher talks to me during science lesson? Do they always or never? Many of the times we see we only talk to the favorite students and we sort of, go away with that one. So this particular theme was based on identity and relationship. What kind of relationship the students want in the classroom? So those are the scores the students can circle. And then what I do, I find the average of the scores and see how important that scale is for the student. If the score is high, that means it's always happening. If the score is very low, that means it's not happening. So that's the current which I measure. But then the second set of survey is all about what students want. If you look on identity and relationship, the question is, I want my science teacher to acknowledge me, or I want my science teacher to pronounce my name. I want to share the cultural experience. I want to have a good working relationship, and I want my science teacher to talk to me. So that will give me as a researcher an indication whether students want the teacher to do that. If the average score, let's say, comes to 4.2 or close to 5, that means for that particular student, identity and relationship is important. And then I compare what's currently happening in the classroom. Let's say currently for a particular student, if he circles on that theme 1, 1, 1, 1, and 2, the average is 1.2. So that's currently happening. And on the second form, if the student circles 5, that means currently in the classroom for that particular student, the teacher is not interacting. He's not able to establish that relationship. But the second form will tell me the student wants to establish the relationship. So that's what the study was focused on. And after the study, after the survey, I sit with a group of students and have a talanwa for half an hour to see what the students have to say about the survey. Because many of the times we do the survey and then we sort of do all different mathematics and we try to come up with the ideas without actually having the proper understanding of what the students are thinking, why they have circled that particular answer. So then I have a talanwa session with the students to provide the meaning behind why they have circled something. So I have surveyed 302 students and had 57 talanwa sessions with a group of 4 students, so 4 or 5 students in 14 different schools in Auckland, Waikato, if you are familiar with Waikato region, Wanganui, which is near Palmerston North, in Wellington region. It took me about 15 months to collect the data from 14 different schools. The reason why it took me so long was that I wanted to make sure that I spend time with the students to really understand what the thinking process is behind the survey answers they are giving me. So that's what I have done. Now let's go and look at what the students are saying. Now, this particular scale or the theme is about identity in relationship. What you can see on the screen is the blue one is actually what's happening. Most of the students, as you can see, are towards my sort of left side, which is on blue. It's almost never happening or seldom happening or sometimes. But majority of the students, our Fijian students, want to establish the relationship with their teachers. They want their teachers to know where they're coming from. They want to know, they want to tell their teachers that they are Fijian students, not students from India or any from Bangladesh or things like that. Even our Itokai students are saying they want their teachers to know that they are native Fijian students, not students from Vanuatu or Solomon Islands. And they are really proud of their culture and identity. So they are telling me that if they have a good relationship, their manner, or what we call is the identity, the self-esteem is very high. When teachers acknowledge them that they are from Fiji, they feel very proud of that. So the mean score for the actual was 4.2 here in New Zealand classroom. That means it's happening there, but the preferred is 4.44. They want even to happen a little bit more than what's currently happening. This shows that students think that identity and relationships are vital for them to succeed in school. During my Talanoa session, students want their teachers to know about their cultural background. They feel that if teachers understand their cultural background, it makes them easy to establish that relationship so that they can ask questions to the teacher, and they are not afraid, and they feel part of the classroom. So that's the first thing that's coming out from that one. Then I wanted to see if there is a difference between Itokai or Fijian Indians or males or females in terms of relationship, or Fijian born or New Zealand born or year levels. Now here you can see in the same question, when I drill down the data, there's a difference between Fijian Indians and Itokai students here in New Zealand classrooms. So I have an opportunity, so I drill down only on one question to share my cultural experiences with others during the science lesson. So I wanted to see if there is a difference between Itokai and Fijian Indians in New Zealand classrooms. What I found that Itokai students felt that they are being hardly acknowledged, or they don't have opportunity to share their cultural experiences compared to the Fijian Indians in New Zealand classrooms. The Fijian Indians, they thought because we are sometimes 7 or 8 in the classroom, we are being noticed more compared to 1 or 2 Itokai students in a classroom. So that's what I got during the Talanoa sessions. So this shows that, you know, sometimes Itokai students here in New Zealand classrooms get neglected because they are minority. Now the next theme was learning in familiar context. When I did the average of all the scores, what I found that students' average score came of all 320 was 3.72. That's actually what's happening in the classroom, but on the preferred form, the average score is 4.32. That means they want more things to happen in the classroom, or more familiar context to be given. So when I sat with the students, and, you know, when I tried to talk, why do you want to learn in a familiar context? The Fijian students, both Itokai and Fijian Indians, or New Zealand born or Fijian borns, males and females, everyone is telling me that say it makes sense to them. They can connect if the context of learning is familiar to them. Or which the context they use in everyday life. So that's coming through there for that particular field. In terms of gender, I tried to break down the questions. So those were the 5 questions in the familiar context. I want to learn science ideas in familiar context. I want to explain scientific ideas in familiar context to my teacher. I want to explain scientific ideas in a familiar context to my peers. I want to get exam questions in a familiar context that is familiar to me. I want to relate science learning to everyday life. What I found is girls, if you look at females, which is green, they want to learn more in familiar context than males. Girls think that science ideas, if the context of learning is not familiar to them, it becomes too difficult to them. It becomes abstract to them compared to the boys. So when I went and looked at the literature in States and other parts of the world, it is very similar. Science ideas for females, they want things to be familiar to them than the boys. Boys thought that they can process the abstract ideas better than the females. I mean, that's other research is also showing in that particular way. So as teachers, it's very important when we are teaching that we see and we try to give familiar context so that our females or girls can get engaged. And the girls are telling me, once they get engaged, when things start, making sense to them, then they can process the abstract ideas. But from the starting point, if the ideas are very abstract, that puts them off, and then they don't engage much into scientific ideas. But once they get engaged, they can process difficult abstract ideas as equal to males. So I'm not saying anything, boys are brighter, girls are, it's not about that. It's about familiar context and try to engage. What girls are saying is that if things are not familiar to them at the beginning, when teachers are starting a new concept, they tend to lose interest, put it this way. That's the right idea. Here, this is not about testing the intelligence. Here, what we're trying to say is engaging students in the interest. What makes females interested in science, or trying to get engaged at the initial stage. So that was their group work. Large majority of the students believe that in New Zealand classrooms, teachers are doing a lot of group work, as you can see in blue. They want a little bit less, to be honest. When I sat with them and I said, why do you want a little bit less group work? They told me, they think that, we are Pacific, so we should be put into groups and we learn through group work. And they said they don't provide structure. During my Talanua session, what they told me, that they want group work to be structured. They want group work to have some sort of guidance. They enjoy working in groups. I'm not saying that they're not enjoying it, working in groups. They like to be in groups. Both Aitokai and Fijian Indians, they like to be with their peers. They can bounce ideas. But they hate if teachers use group work as a time filler, where they give a question and then they tell, go and do our research. They said, we are not researchers. They have to tell us how to do research first before we can go and research. So they want more structure in terms of group work. The next one is on critical voice. Majority of our students, when I say our, Fijian students, both Aitokai, Fijian Indians, whether girls, boys, wherever they are born, majority, I'm saying, not all, they don't, have, no, I'm not saying not everyone, but they don't feel confident to ask teachers, why do I have to learn this? They don't question the authority. Critical voice is about questioning the authority of the teacher. Why are you teaching? You're not teaching us properly. You're not giving us work. Now, our students are very submissive. They have a very high respect for their teachers. And it's a cultural thing. When I sit with the students, they say they are surprised to hear some of the comments from their peers in the classroom from other ethnic races, how they talk to their teachers compared to them. They said, in our culture, we have been told by our parents that teachers respected figures, and whatever they tell you to do, you should be doing it. So whether they teach you properly or not, they don't feel confident to answer back to the teachers. But that doesn't mean that they're not confident in asking questions. Here, the thing was critical voice. Can they critically analyze the classroom atmosphere, or how they are learning, where learning is making sense to them or not? They will just sit down and nod their head. Even if the teacher says, do you understand? They will just say yes. They will not critically say, oh, no, we don't understand, or the way you are teaching doesn't make sense to us. So as teachers, we have to be mindful of them. So we have to do a lot of formative work, give small quizzes or things like this to test the understanding where they are, compared to just say, do you understand, and carry on. So as teachers, we have to be a little bit more careful here when we try to assume whether our students have understood concepts or not. So as I've already said about respectful, they believe the teachers are always correct in what they are saying. Some students who are recent migrants, they are a bit shy in asking questions because they think everybody looks at them. They believe they've got a very strong accent, and people can look and mock them because they don't talk like how others talk. So these are some of the things as teachers here in New Zealand classroom, but particularly maybe equally important in your classroom back in Fiji, city students plus students coming from rural areas. I mean, I can reflect myself. I'm from a rural place in Ba, and then going to a high school first time in town was a very daunting process for me. And I could see the town students, they were behaving differently from where I was coming from, farming, hardly being to the town. And for the first year in Form 3, I was very shy. I did not ask questions. So in your classroom, this is equally important. Our students come from villages, different villages inside remote areas in Fiji. Like I taught in Vunidimi back junior high school, used to be there in Naiti City, and they go to Suva schools at times, So those are the things that you have to be mindful, is who is in front of them and where they're coming from. What is their background? It's very, very important for you to understand where our students are coming from, irrespective of race, religion, and culture. Once you understand where your students are coming from, then meaningful learning can happen. Shared control. This is shared control, whether our students want to have a control of what they want to learn or which activities they want to choose. Our Fijian students do want to have a say in terms of what activities they want to do. This particular research with that many students, they said they want to have a say in which activities they want to do, whether they want to have a role play, whether they want to sit in groups, whether they want to watch a video, whether they want teacher to explain from the board, whether they want teachers to take them on a field trip, on an excursion, or whether to do Kahoot or other platforms or online learning. So it is important that we teachers have to be reflective of our practices. And being a reflective teacher helps us both to improve our performance and plus the students' achievement rate. And I think it is very, very important and crucial as teachers to be reflective. And I know it is difficult. I have more than 20 years of experience in 8 different schools in 2 different countries, in New Zealand and Fiji. I've taught 3 different schools in Fiji. So I understand, the difficulty, the time pressure. This is where, the bigger picture, the school principal and the ministry can come in and help the teachers to form clusters. adopt a model. One of the best leading model in the world is the Singaporean education style of learning and how reflective that the teachers are. And I've had a couple of sessions with the teachers and researchers from Singapore. And that model is one of the leading model of the world. And the achievement rate is very, very high. Singapore is very diverse, multicultural, similar to probably Fiji or New Zealand, but they're doing really, really well. So then I drilled a little bit further. Shared control, Aitokai versus Fijian Indians. Compared to Fijian Indians, Aitokai students want more control of the activities which they do. And there is a reason behind it when I had a conversations with them. The reason why students want to do it, Aitokai students think that they have lots to share with their colleagues, with the teachers here in New Zealand secondary schools. They got wealth of science in their culture, which their ancestors has to were living. So these are the findings that I'm getting through. So concluding remark is, for Fijian students, identity, relationship, and learning in familiar context is really, really important, and working in a structured group work are vital for their learning process. However, they are not very keen on asking questions to which teacher, to the teacher. However, they are keen to decide on which activities they want to do. So that was my presentation for tonight. In my blurb, I also mentioned that I wanted to also share something with you guys, which I was part of the team that we developed. I know I do want to acknowledge, the people who are behind this. That they worked really hard to come with the website, and other teachers that are using the resources from them. So the resource I have used, I wanted to share. It's an online resource which you guys can use if you want to. So I just want to talk to the host first. Do you have any questions before I want to I share that resource? How does that?
I was just going to say, maybe you can finish presentation of your resources, and then we can have a question and answer session at the end of all your presentation, Alvin.
Okay, thank you. So this is the online learning platform. I know you people are also using online learning platform in your schools. I want to just share what I have used here. I want to just go back. These resources, about 90% will closely align with your secondary schools. This is the dashboard, and each topic has been broken down. So aspects of mechanics is a topic on mechanics, which you can customize. This platform is being provided through Open Polytech in Wellington. They have given access to Fijian teachers, because I'm part of the development team, to use the resources. So I just wanted to share. So each topic has been numbered. Here in New Zealand, we say standards. In Fiji, you can say standards or topic. So this topic is 90940. So I can, as a facilitator, I can enter as a teacher. And I just wanted to take you through an overview how this has been structured. You can load your students in here, right? And the content has already been made for you, but you can change the content and you can do a lot of things with this. So for mechanics, those who are physics teachers, these are the topics over there, distance and time graph. So I can go over there, and then it gives me, the question, the answer, but it also have the notes in this particular thing. So it's just happened that I went on this one. It has got a question. So it has got some notes. Motion is the way something is moving. The motion of an object such as car or tennis ball is describing using quantities like so. It has got some questions, then it will have some answers. It will also have videos and other stuff as we go along. But as teachers, you can develop on these resources, change and chop the resources. Sorry. So what you do, then you go to the next page, and then you will have more notes, more resources, more questions. It has got questions and answers, and some of this will also have videos. For example, students can look.
Formulas. First, the way to remember how to lay out the letters in the triangle is that they are in alphabetical order, D, S, T. Then add dividing lines between them. The reason for these will become clear later. You find the formula you need to use by simply covering up the letter of what it is you need to find. If the question asks you how far.
So, as I have mentioned, that all these resources are there. This is just on one topic, right? There are videos and questions, and then also there are assessments over here. If you look at my left-hand side, things can be downloaded. Students can make their own notes, or teachers can make their own notes. You can customize this particular platform. Here in New Zealand, we call learning management system. And I know it's like, you guys have used Google Classroom and things like that, or Edmodo or Moodle or My Classes. I have used about 7 different platforms, but most of the platforms don't have content, but this particular platform has got a content. Here you can see it's written James Cook High School. You can customize, we can customize your school if you want your school to use these resources. And each teacher will have a login. The students will also have a login. And there are all different topics of all subjects, year levels have been carried out. The good thing is for Fiji schools, for Fiji teachers, because I was part of the development team through Open Polytech, I've requested, because of COVID, that we give access to the teachers and students in Fiji. The management of Open Polytech have kindly agreed to us, if teachers want to use it, you guys can use it, but you need to contact me to understand, how to get the logins and what needs to be done. There are contact people here in New Zealand who can help you and train you how to, use this resource. It's very simple, very, like Moodle or any other platform. The only difference is that it has got a content, and you can also alter the content according to your needs. So my understanding is, if we want to, if a group of teachers want to, they can come together and you can work on different subject areas and develop, if you want to change a bit of content or whatever, link can be provided through the website, My Teachers Forum or whatever, and then you teachers can access this information. Vinakavakalevu, dhanyavad. Thank you. This is what I wanted to share. I've also made heaps of small videos because during the last 2 months, I've been teaching my niece and nephews via Zoom, and I've recorded those videos. I've got about 30-40 videos, small 10-20-minute videos on all different topics in science, year 9 and year 10 science. And if you guys want to use it, I can provide you with a link, or I can give it to Navneet and he can upload it on the website. If that helps, or whichever way helps. so that you can pass it to your students. The way I've made a video is an interactive video because I'm using a couple of programs I've integrated where I can write on my screen, just like it's similar to Khan's Academy, but it's a bit different because because if you look at Khan's Academy, he just writes things and he keeps talking too fast. So what I'm doing, I want to use the Fijian context when I'm teaching. For example, if I'm talking about critical angle or reflection, I want to give an example of how our ancestors used to go and do fishing in the ocean. You know, when you're doing spear fishing, you don't aim at the fish, you aim a little bit below the fish, so that due to refraction, the spear goes and hits the fish. Otherwise, you're going to miss. These are some knowledge, or, you know, weaving baskets and things like that, how we can incorporate science ideas, or cooking, conduction, convection, radiation. I always use LOVO, you know, how LOVO is, food is cooked during LOVO process. You know, what are some of the things, how this insulation occurs. Here in New Zealand, I have came up with tasks because I teach in a Pacifica school. It's about 1,500 students. So as a head of faculty and also working with ministry, we are actually changing the curriculum here in New Zealand. By 2023 or 24, we will have a refreshed curriculum. So I'm part of the committee here, and I put a Pacifica lens, and my role is to provide context to the learning. So I have developed quite a lot of resources in terms of assessment. So when I say internal assessment, we give students, let's say, the implications of heat, or how, you know, the heat transfer from one place to another. Then the resources which I have developed is using Hangi, Umu, or Lovo. So in particular, most of the time I use Lovo because I've got a lot of Fijian Indians and Waikato students in my school, and they really enjoy. And then we do Lovo actually. We do actual Lovo. It's not we only do it in the classroom as a theory. After 5 weeks, we do a Lovo, I show them, you know, and they get excited, and we eat together. And it's all about relationship. It's all about building that identity and culture that goes. And once students get interested in science, here I'm talking about science, or whatever subject discipline you are in, then, you know, they'll become lifelong learners. I think that's what the objective is for all of us. And thank you very much for coming along and listening to my talk. I know you guys have sacrificed a lot, and I think together we are all in one. We want, you know, our students, or Fijian students, to excel in education. How can we do it? I know Navneet and a few other people have worked really hard over you know, this year and last year, and I'm really impressed that we have a number of teachers from overseas who want to help you, you know, back in home. We want to do our small contribution, and we know the situation. You know, I've taught in Fiji. In whatever way we can, it will be my honor to help you people. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Alvin. Lovo in a physics class. I've never heard of that before, and that's the physics class I want to be in. That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You know, some of the things you're doing, Alvin. First of all, I think thank you, Alvin. I think you have left us, and I'm sure to all of us here, with lots of thoughts, lots of things to reflect upon, especially about your research and the way you have gone about collecting data, interviewing 302 students in 14 schools around New Zealand in 15 months. That's very impressive. And the thing that you have found out, the research findings, as you have said yourself, it's something that has never existed, and this is probably one of the first time that we get an insight of how the Fijian students in New Zealand are actually learning and that sort of data has never existed. So I'm actually looking forward to some of your other findings and reading a bit more about. I'm in Australia. I'm in Melbourne, and something that would be beneficial to us here as well. And as I said at the start of the introduction, your findings, your research, while is based in New Zealand, I think the findings have a much wider implications than just the science curriculum and the New Zealand context. So thank you. You've given us lots of things to think about and reflections to take with us. I will now invite people. The floor is open. If people would like to ask Alvin some questions, or if you want to give some reflections of yourself of anything that he has presented. Yes, Shalin.
Very interesting topic, Alvin. It's one of the unique topics that I have ever had. And like you are studying the Fijian students' perception, how they study in New Zealand. Just few clarification maybe or suggestions you can these are quite new field for me. I'm a HR personnel. You have collected like more than 300 data. So, how was the data analyzed?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Good question. The data has been analyzed using a special software, what we call is SPSS. Now, SPSS is a software. SPSS is a special software which we use in education and social sciences. So before data has been analyzed, we do a validity and reliability check. To see whether the data is valid or not valid. It's a special mathematical software. If you many of you probably know SPSS and have used SPSS before. So that's a platform that has been used. And then variance has been checked, mean value, and there are special things that we do in SPSS to make sure that as I've said, the data is reliable and valid. Together with my professors at the University of Waikato, and I've also published the reliability and validity part in one of the journal articles at Waikato University. So if you want more information, I can forward those journal articles. I've written 3, 2 in collaboration with some researchers from Australia. One I've written myself with the help of my professors. The other one collaboration with a researcher from Samoan University and one from Tonga. So that's how I have analyzed the data. But good question. Thank you, Salim.
Thank you. Just one more clarification. You have studied this Fijian student in New Zealand context. Do you think that national culture had any influence on the students' learning style or ability?
Thank you once again. When you say natural, what culture are you talking
about? National culture. The learning style of New Zealand and then the learning style of this Fijian context, there might be some disparity or some differences. So was there any influence of those national culture in New Zealand context that have influenced these Itoke students or Fijian students studying in New Zealand?
You want to maybe tell what do you mean by national culture again, Shalin?
If you look at the organization, they have organizational cultures and values that may confine you to that standard of behavior.
Oh, okay. I think my understanding, you are saying national culture means the culture of the country, for example.
Yes.
Yeah. No, thanks, Alain. As you know, culture has got many definitions according to the research, and culture is also fluid. What culture means to me is also, is different from what it means to you, how we perceive culture. It's a fluid thing. it is different from individual to individual. I might perceive myself differently, although I'm a Fijian Indian compared to you or other teacher. So yes, of course, culture does play, national culture does play a role. But in this research, I wanted to look at the overall view as what students think. Some students' views can be extreme, some can be on the other side. But my research finding is, generally speaking, that's what our Fijian students want their classroom learning environment to be. They want teachers to have a good relationship with them. They want to have an identity, because many of the times our Fijian students, as I've said, are being lumped together, sometimes as specific students. And some of the Fijian students, Fijian Indians, are lumped with Asian students. They don't like this, to be honest. They have got a unique identity. They feel proud, and they think that Fiji, they are Fijians and they're proud to be Fijians, which is coming very strongly from the Fijian students. Because when I started this 15 months ago, a teacher in one of the schools said, "Hey, Alvin, this is a joke. They won't even say that they are from Fiji. They will say they are all Kiwis." But when I actually sit down and talk with the students, they say, no, although we are Kiwis, but we are love to be associated with Fiji, and we have got our own identity. Because as we know, in terms of human nature, if you don't have an identity, where will you belong? So that's what is coming very strongly from the research.
Thank you. Dr. to be Alvin Chand, and all the best in your PhD endeavor.
Thank you.
Hello, Sam. This is from Fiji, Mrs. Raj. Just referring to the that's really learning to those two groups of children you are referring to. The outcome, their marks, their grades are affected if you compare the two different groups' results.
Yeah,
I'm really interested to know.
good question. Yes, this study hasn't gone that far to look at the achievement level, but internationally speaking, studies have been done to look at the learning environment of the student and the achievement rate. International studies indicate if the learning environment is conducive to student or the learners, then the achievement rate of the students also go up, which is no-brainer. We do know, we were all students at one particular time, that if the learning environment, for example, for me being a student, is conducive, if I like to learn in that particular environment, of course I will engage more. If I engage more, then my learning will be there. If my learning is there, that will be reflected in the achievement data. So achievement data is one, well-being data is another one. Here we are looking at the whole human perspective, not only the achievement, we are also looking at the emotions. We are also looking at making a good human being, and the social aspect and all those things. So, achievement in education is one, and the holistic thing in education is the other thing. So I think in any country, globally speaking, we want to develop a nation, a country where we can live in harmony. There is cultural understanding. There's all aspects of human nature is being addressed. But good question. Yes, international studies have shown if the learning environment is conducive to the students, or students want to be in a learning environment, then they engage in learning. If they engage in learning, they learn. Once they learn, then they perform well in the assessment.
Thank you, Shami. Alvin, I have a question. When you were talking about critical voice, it's more of an observation and maybe see what you think. I teach in a school that has a fairly significant Indian student population. These are Indians from India. And of course, the teachers are Aussies, Australian teachers. And one of the concerns our teachers have, and this is where I think you touched on some elements of it, is that the students are not critical thinkers as such. They are very happy. I'm specifically talking about the Indian students. They are just very happy to be told what needs to be done. And it is a challenge. How do we get these students to think independently? They are very happy to be given information. They're very happy to be, they, as you had said before, they just are taught maybe, you know, it's a bit of a cultural thing where we are brought up to just accept that teachers are always right and never to question. But the, you know, how do we get these students to actually, you know, move away, shift away from that sort of thinking?
Yeah, no, good. I mean, we also have a similar challenge, you know, in some of the schools where a large number of students are from different countries, because coming from different countries is we come with the culture, and whatever culture that we come up with, you know, how the learning was happening in that country, we get, you know, accustomed to that. And then we want similar stuff when we move from country to country. What we call is border crossing. Border crossing in terms of education means when you go from one kind of thinking process, you know, how things were done in your custom, your culture, your country, to another country where things are done a little bit differently and the expectation is also a little bit different. So as educators and as teachers, we have to be first mindful and acknowledge what they are coming up with, because each learner is different, each culture is different. Acknowledge and find out, probably listen to them, why they want to be submissive or passive listeners, because many students think, you know, teachers have to provide us with a lot of materials, learning materials and worksheets and, you know, notes, and then we'll study only those notes. So in that particular case, I would say it will be interesting to sit with the groups and find out, to see what they want, what is their expectation from the education system in that particular classroom, what they expect from them, and then to make them more critical thinkers, probably give them some sort of task or activities that challenges them to go a little bit further beyond in what they are currently thinking is good learning, because learning can be done in different styles, in different ways. As you've already mentioned, that those students coming from India, probably they have got accustomed to be passive learners, because that's how they construct knowledge.
We said and asked them what do they want to get out of the education system, I can almost guarantee they will tell you that they all want to become engineers, they all want to become doctors, then they all want to pass exams. And I suppose that's something that's been indoctrinated from home. So that's all their main drive is, to just pass exams and, you know, get into university and become engineers and doctors.
So are they passing exam?
Oh, they pass exams, yeah.
Okay. So if they pass exam, if that method is working for them, and if they pass exams, and if the exam questions make them think critically, that means they are critical thinkers. So there is no issue there outside. So probably design some tasks which challenges them. Like here, when we design tasks, we don't give task that they can memorize and come and just, you know, reveal the answers. So this, as I've said, here, New Zealand, 50% of the assessment is internal, just like in Fiji, probably 40% or something like that. Common assessment task is designed in such a way that they cannot memorize or be passive learners. So the task requires them to actively engage in the activity. Some of the task is to go and do the experiment. I know when I was a student in Fiji, we were doing 20 experiments. So that's, trying to engage students. So the type of assessment, then might lead into what kind of learning you want the students to do.
All right, we get some more questions from the floor. Alvin, you also mentioned something. Sorry, Geeta, go for it.
Hello, Alvin and Navneet and teachers. Hope you are doing well. I just wanted to add on about critical thinking. Like in the past, we were just focusing on exams and results. For the past 2 years, I have found that nowadays in Fiji even, students don't want just exams and task and passing exams. So what they are trying to do nowadays is they want to come around and form groups and do things. So in my school, I have seen this year, we have got students coming up with the idea of newsletters. So during COVID, when we were on lockdown, they did the newsletter themselves. The teachers didn't help. That they did it online and they sent it to me, and then we had shared it. So similarly, we have students who initiate a magazine. They have started the magazine, online magazine, zero effort from the teachers. They were part of the chess club. So they want to lead and they want to do things, and we have to let go and let them do it. Then only they'll become critical thinkers. And they will have that problem solving ability. In the past, we were the leaders and dictator kind of leadership was there. So the principal or the VP and the AP has to approve, then things get done. But nowadays, we have to let them do the things. And you'll find that most students in Fiji are moving towards that. And they know at university level even, they'll have to do things like that. And for our ducks and other types of awards that we have, now we don't just look at academic. We want them to do service work. We want them to go about doing extracurricular activities. So I think that will enable critical thinking and problem solving ability. That's my viewpoint. Thank you.
No, I think that's absolutely spot on, Geeta. I think we had a conversation earlier on when we were talking about in the context of technology. It's okay to accept nowadays that some students are in fact knowing more than the teachers when it comes especially about technology, and that's fine. I think I can see someone else's hand is up. No. Alvin, you mentioned about the Singaporean model. I'm actually quite interested because we all, we get to hear a lot more about the Finland model. I was wondering whether that's also promoted as the world's #1 education model. I was wondering if you have any experience and studies about that particular model.
Yeah, I know about the Finland, and you are absolutely right. When we talk about the education system and a lot of readings, if you go and see, and they talk about Finland and how Finland is doing in terms of education and how the students are succeeding. I haven't had much readings in terms of journal articles, but I have read few articles. I know their model is quite good. The reason why I got interested in the Singapore one, because I thought it is close to us, and it's quite multi-ethnic, and most of you probably are familiar with Singapore. And Fiji has got good ties with Singapore, and a lot of people travel back and forth. So in their education system and how they are doing, it's a very small landmass, a huge number of population, quite multi-ethnic, multicultural, and how they are managing everything together. It's like a melting pot, but they're doing really, really well. So that's why I studied a little bit of Singapore. But you're absolutely right. Finland is there, is based mostly on the Western style of techniques. So yeah, no, you're right, spot on.
So what was a unique feature about the Singaporean model?
The unique feature was the Talanua. Currently, what we are doing, the teacher PD, the Ministry of Education there invests a huge amount of money in terms of teacher development and looking at the student voices and what students want. So they are always on the ground. And it's like region based. For example, if we talk about Palo Tokanindi, and the PD is localized, what might necessarily work in bar schools might not necessarily work in native city schools. I'm just putting a context in here. So in Singaporean model, it's sort of, although it's a very small, landmass, they were clusters of schools which are nearby, have the same ethnic group of people, coming to that school. They were forming those clusters to find out the learning environment the students are in, and what. So we need to understand in here, as teachers, we create a learning environment. We all understand learning environment is environment that we create as teachers. It could be a strict learning environment, no talking, okay? No talking, absolutely no talking, and I'm guilty. I've done that. So that's a learning environment that we can say, for 10 minutes, no talking. That's good, can be a good learning environment. Kids might like it. Then for 10 minutes, we can create a learning environment, which is collaboration, where students have a talanua, feel free, and we go around, do something. Another 10 minutes, we can create a learning environment where they, as Namnik, you've said, where we want to encourage them to be critical thinkers and try to give them something hands-on, whatever you want to do. Another 10 minutes. So what kind of learning environment we are creating and what kind of learning environment students want. If there is a big mismatch between them, then there will be a disengagement and discipline problem. Once we get into a disengagement, then students will be off task, and then we have to whip them, be very strict with them. They will become passive learners. End of the day, some learners will thrive. But in the Fijian model of education system, what I have found in all the literature that people have done from 1950s or 1940s, what it says in the Fijian model, especially for the Aitoke students, Aitoke students don't want to be passive learners. If you look at the historic history of Aitoke learners, they were, learners in groups. They wanted to share ideas. They wanted to have a relationship. Once you have that relationship going, that learning takes place. It's all about the respect and all those things. And what I have found in this particular research is Fijian Indians who have been in Fiji for 150 years have a compass, they have gone to that culture, adapted some of the local cultures, and there has been a lot of what we call is integration, and there is a hybrid of, the culture is become sort of intertwined, that they understand, each other's learning styles. Probably there are some extreme ends here and there, but this is the large environment I'm talking about. So one of the things in Fiji teachers can do is get into clusters. Principals can, get teachers, science teachers into cluster groups, different subjects, regional wise, and ministry can support them. And then we can have people, from outside to support those teachers. How we can find and assess what kind of learning environment we are creating. Here, we don't want to create workload for the teachers. We want to reduce the workload. The whole idea is that we, in terms of research or PD, we want to help the teachers to focus more into teaching and learning, and to help them to develop resources in all these things, as Navneet, you have been doing. So the idea is to reduce the workload, not to increase the workload. Because if you try to put too much pressure in terms of trying to do this and that, as teachers, we all know we are running short of time. So the thing is, how can we reduce the workload? How can we do it in a smarter way so that time is valuable to everyone? We want to spend time with our families, with our loved ones, and also we want to do the best for our learners. So how we can do this, how we can achieve this, as I've said, Singapore has got a good model where the teachers come together, they talk about, it's not about criticizing, hey, Alvin, you are a very bad teacher, you got 20% result last year, no pay for you. No, that is not the Singaporean model. Singaporean model is learning together to improve the education, holistic education. It's not, Singaporean model is not only based on achievement. It's based on the whole society and moving the country forward, and how is a country we can progress together and live in a harmonious society. That's what education is all about, end of the day.
Alvin, I was just going to say, you've actually stolen my thunder. I think you just read my mind, because what I was going to end tonight's webinar was to say that, our next thinking, now that we have, provided 12 webinars, what I was thinking, is to actually start thinking of the next academic year and using our platform to actually form little groups. And now that we have the platform, we can form groups of, I'm just saying, let's group of, say, physics teachers, and they don't have to be physics teachers in the one school. We can have physics teachers, say about 10 different physics teachers from around Fiji come together. Let's start some planning for next year. Let's get a group of maths teachers and let's plan for year 12 maths for next year. Plan I don't know what sort of planning documents are required, but whatever the planner is, whatever the assessments is, we don't have to do it together, as Alvin just said. And you've just stolen my, I think you just read my mind where this was going, is to actually start a process. And I think I was having a conversation about this with Geeta just a few days ago, just exactly on this particular topic, is let us start a system. And our platform is a perfect place to do this, because we've already got the infrastructure, we've actually got the people, is to get groups of, group of primary school, and Losana is here as well. Maybe let's group of, I don't know, early childhood teachers, and let's start planning for next year. So what can you do in year one numeracy? And no one person is the, it's a storage of all the knowledge. So let's share these ideas and let's just continue this theme of collaboration, and just extend it in terms of our planning for next year. So that's where we're going to go as far as this is concerned. Yeah. And I'm really glad. Thank you, Alvin, for coming along as well. I'm glad that you're part of our platform, and we're looking forward to a lot more of your contributions and help provide more resources, professional development, and help sort of kind of lead some of these groups for us. In terms of resources, you mentioned some of those resources. Obviously they are free, and we can have a chat about this later on. And I'm more than happy to put some of those resources on our website, and I'm sure you've done some of those, your own videos. Those interactive videos you're talking about, I'm sure they're absolutely brilliant. So I'm quite happy to actually have them posted on our website as well. As I said, we actually have a YouTube channel. If you don't mind, we could actually put this on our channel and make it accessible to all the teachers.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. You can share the videos online. Yep.
All right, so we can have a conversation about it later on and see how we can do that. Let's do that. Do we get any more questions? Any? Any other observation? Any more? Alvin Chand, what's happening in Senganga at the moment?
Good evening, sir. I'm currently in Lotoka.
Lotoka, okay.
Sir.
So what's happening in Lotoka, Praveen?
Sir, sitting with my family with the family ritual, Navratri Puja.
Right. And which school you teaching, Praveen?
Senganga Center College, sir.
All right, okay.
Will be traveling, might be traveling next week.
And what subjects do you teach?
English Social Science, sir.
Okay, good. Is this? No, I think that's about it. Alvin, thank you very, very much. That was very, very interesting. Obviously, you've done a lot of work, a lot of effort has gone into your research. I wish you well on behalf of all our members here. We wish you well. I'm sure we'll call you Dr. Alvin Chand in the not too far future. You have given lots of things to think about. And thank you again for the resources. We will definitely put those and get this accessible to our members. And looking forward to your continued, connection with us.